What does it mean to adapt to a completely different environment? How do we adjust the new world, both personally and professionally? I'm Marina Morgan, an entrepreneur and the founder of the Morgan Impact, the boutique organizational psychology agency in Silicon Valley. On this channel, we discuss the most relevant knowledge and practices that help me and my client to build resilience and grow their businesses even in the most challenging and unpredictable time. It's not a secret that any change is stressful, even if you are prepared and have been planning this change for a while. Change could be anything, like a reorg in your company, a move to a new city or country, or a personal change that requires you to adapt. In the reality, the only one thing that is guaranteed to us is the change. And the more flexible we are, the more resilient we become. It's such a paradox. In my example, even I'm fairly prepared and come with a background in psychology, moving to another country was a big challenge. No one can fully calculate the entire process, especially some routine actions. This could be simple things like what type of bread I can choose or where's the coffee machine in my new office. In familiar environment, all of this is automated. Now the question is why this happens. Our brain gets used to routine tasks and habits, and as we age, it becomes more difficult to cope with the changes in life. By the age of 24, the human brain is usually fully formed, and acquiring new skills becoming more complicated. Does this mean it's nearly impossible to adapt to major life changes later in life? Of course not. And today we'll talk about why this happens and look at the scientific concept of neuroplasticity, our brain ability to adapt and to learn new skills no matter the age or the situation. We'll discuss what neuroplasticity is, how it's built, and how to enhance its performance and functions. To begin our discussion on neuroplasticity, it is important to understand how our brain functions and what important role it plays in our learning and development. This understanding will help us to choose the most effective approach to continuous development, especially if we're talking about the formation of professional skills. I'd like to note that our brain is a physical organ and it functions according to a certain laws of physiology. In a nutshell, the brain consists of cells interacting with each other. These cells is well known as neurons. The cells that make our brain are very specific and they build synaptic connection that form sophisticated neural networks. Let's look at some video here. As the fetus develops, brain cells are distributed to the right areas of the brain where they start reaching out to each other. They kind of grow together and form the synaptic connection or the architecture of our brain. In some cases, that's what our personality is. The process of neuroplasticity is already starting to happen during the prenatal period. We are accepting reality and can hear mother's voice, for example. It's a magic, isn't it? During the first few months of our life, the formation of the new neural synaptic connection reaches its peak. Okay, let's stop here. Try to guess what's the number of the neural connection during this period per second. 10,000? 200,000? Please take a pause here and write a comment below. How do you think? Okay, I'll tell you now. It's up to 2 million new connections per second. Can you even imagine? This is a crucial period in our life. Later, the rate of the formation of such neural connection begins to decrease. The brain also undergoes significant pruning where less used connections are eliminated to make the brain more efficient. In my age, for example, this formation rate slows down to approximately 20,000 new connections per second. That's the reality. In our youth, brains forms new neural connection quickly because it's still plastic, and later in life we deal with the compounding life experience and have to prioritize what to keep and what to get rid of. Why do you think that with age we become more particular in choosing what we want to experience? Maybe that's the reason. It is important to remember that the older a person gets, the more difficult this process becomes. It doesn't mean that change is impossible, and of course it doesn't mean that the growth stops. In adults, the brain continues to develop more complex networks, but the rate of new connection formation decreases around 30,000 connections per second in early adulthood. By the midlife, this rate further declines to about 15,000 connections per second. Later in life, the rate of synaptic formations continues to decline. The brain still remains plastic, and new connection can still form, especially with a continued mental and physical activity. We will tell about how important the physical activity is for our brain a little bit later. By the late 70s and early 80s, the rate of the new connection formation slows to 3,000 per second. But as you can see, it is still going. We should just remember about it and give yourself enough time to integrate new experience and to be patient for ourselves. Because you should remember that this is a physical process, and to learn some more skills and some knowledge, you need a time to integrate it physically in your brain. And of course, year by year, you need more resources to keep your cognitive abilities. I believe you remember how easy it was to pull an all-nighter to study for an exam and perform successfully. Now I can't even imagine something like this. If I will not sleep a couple days, my focus will be completely destroyed. Other important things is that the human brain develops up to the age of 24 years, sometimes later, sometimes earlier, but this is the average age where our brain is finally fully developed. It's extremely easy to form new synaptic connection before this period. We accept all information as is. Usually, we learn quite rapidly during that time. But what happens after the age of 24 years old? Around this age, many people describe this moment of reaching their brain formation maturity as, it's like I woke up. It's like my head fell back into the place. Do you remember something like this about yourself? Many young adults look back at their teenage years and say something like, it was like a different person. I can't believe that I did that. And critical thinking becomes available for us at this period. So everything that we've been experienced before record into our brain physically. So if you need to change some patterns that you learned in your youth, give yourself enough time for this. It can be more difficult sometimes than to learn new skills, and you should remember it. Also, it's important to remember that, like in any physical organ, brain can get sick. In some cases, the interaction between brain cells can also be damaged due to the external circumstances. Because of that, applying concepts of the philosophy or psychology without also evaluation physiology would be impractical. To understand deeper what makes us to act like this, we first need to understand what's physically going on with our brain. More often, psychology is focused on modalities of our perception of the reality and how our childhood influences us in adult life. But the way how we perceive the world is closely related to how we physically feel, including this moment. If you're tired, irritated, haven't slept for a while, or let's say drank alcohol for a day before and feel bad today, all that could explain why the brain doesn't function at its best on a given day. All such examples will significantly affect how you will perceive reality and interpret it. For example, if you take the same road to the work every day and everything else is pretty much the same, but you didn't sleep well, then the most likely you will be irritated by everything: a person next to you on a bus, someone's voice, traffic, and the world in general. On the other hand, if you feel good physically, then most likely you will focus on the pleasant aspects of the reality. Even the same traffic won't disturb you as much, and you might focus on a beautiful sunset or some amazing environment around you. Our physiological state is closely connected to our perception of the reality, and our general state of health is also crucial for perception. Does any of this sound familiar? Leave a comment below. I suppose that the question that you're asking yourself now is where and when all this process is happening. And I will answer you, and my answer maybe will surprise you. During the day, we receive new experience, and during we sleep, we integrate them. This is then the active process of neuroplasticity occurs. It's very important to understand. We are learning and adapting when we sleep. So, if you have any idea to optimize your timeline and don't sleep enough, this is not a very good idea, because you will not be able to integrate all the experience that you get or all new knowledge that you read in some source. This communication between neurons during we sleep is critical in understanding the concept of neuroplasticity. This video shows how repeating the same action forms a strong synaptic connection. On the contrary, if you just try to do something and the neurons reached out to each other and maybe even slightly touch each other, but this process did not develop in the future, the connection wouldn't be strong and maybe even can ruin. Even if we have learned a certain skills well, but stopped practicing it, that skills will fade over time. This is how the process of elimination occurs and how natural selection occurs as well. Neuroplasticity begins to develop in humans while we are still very young, you remember, during our prenatal period, and continues to develop through our lives, just to a different speed. The other thing that is very important to understand, that from our early age, our neuroplasticity formed by everything that's surrounding us. Our language we spoke, how our city organized, what the cultural and traditional aspects of our family we have. We just accept it as it is, and our brain integrate these patterns and use them later in life. Our parents and our environment around us is also influence us significantly. Imagine you grew up in a happy home where there was no judgment and learning new skills was encouraged. This would train your brain to be curious, open to change, and want to grow without limitations. If, on the other hand, there was a stressful situation that limited growth, that would create barriers in a person's growth later in life. If you, for example, come from a family or culture with a high expectation or a low tolerance for mistakes, you may need additional patience and support because your brain may not perceive growth and changes as safe. Some of these negative patterns can produce unhealthy relationship with clients or partners. It's not a permanent issue and can be changed. You just need to understand what you are dealing with. When the brain is fully formed, a so-called critical thinking becomes available to us. It's actually a sign of a mature personality. And after that, you can critically choose what is truth for you and what is not. Critical thinking helps us validate and justify the information we receive every day. We always want to find measurable critical verification and compare it with what we already know. We also qualify some information as subjective. Let's say someone criticizes your work and you want to understand if that judgment is qualified. If it comes from a qualified professional and you are very tired or irritated, you might have a quick reaction to this and will immediately get upset and go into self-doubt. On the other hand, if you feel rest and generally well and qualified person offers you criticism or feedback, you can ask them clarifying questions and sort things out. Another example, and this is relevant especially for the students and job seekers, is overthinking what we cannot know. For example, before an important exam or a job interview, we can sleep while overthinking every little detail of how things might go. Logically, we cannot know how the future unfolds. We can only do our best to prepare and practice. So, to support ourselves, we can lean on the idea of "I'm going to get through it anyway." And everything will be as best as possible. This way, we detach from the outcome and empower ourselves to be ready. Sounds familiar? Let me know in the comment below. And what is your personal phrase to support yourself in the difficult circumstances? Please share it. It will be very interesting to know more about it. All this awareness comes from understanding the concept of neuroplasticity, and we will dive deeper into some tips and techniques on how to boost it in our next episode. To learn more, some practical information about your personal and professional growth, make sure to subscribe and sign up for notification. Each episode will bring you more information on how to unlock the power of your brain or navigate life's hurdles. If you'd like to learn more about a specific topic, leave a comment below. My team and I will pay strong attention to all of your comments, and your topic may be featured in our next video. Thank you for watching.